Good afternoon. Welcome to this month's Exploring Quality in Family Childcare. Today we are going to be diving into this topic of risky play, what it is, why it's important, and how you can safely do this in your family childcare program. My name is Grace Eilers. I am the Family Childcare Content Specialist with Satellite Family Childcare System, and I will be helping to facilitate this event. We have many other voices sprinkled throughout our time together tonight, including yours. So we're going to begin, as we normally do, with our Exploring Quality sessions, talking about where this shows up in two different standards of quality. The first being Satellite's accreditation standards. And within Section 4 of titled Supporting Children's Development, it states that the educator helps children learn skills and habits that contribute to their safety. And one of those ways being that the educator helps children learn to consider the safety implications of their actions and play. So, we are going to be talking a lot about this today, about how children explore the limits of their bodies and how you can allow this and support this in your program. And through children testing limits, they are going to learn how to assess risk, which contributes to their safety. So we're going to dive into that today. This also shows up in the Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards. It is mentioned in approaches to learning that children should approach learning by displaying curiosity, taking risks, and a willingness to engage in new experiences. So it even pulls out risk-taking in the Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards. So that's what we are going to be narrowed in on today, this idea of risk and risky play. And to introduce this concept, we are going to watch this video together, which is a great introduction into some of the concepts that we are going to be diving deeper into later on.
Risk is a fundamental part of play. It's not about putting children in dangerous situations. It's about saying that children need to test their own boundaries and their limits. So, on a practical sense, there's a difference between a risk and a hazard. A hazard is something that the child can't see for themselves that's in their environment that could, cause serious injury. So, for example, a hazard when you're playing outside might be a big hole in the ground that's sort of covered up and you can't see that it's there. So if you ran, your foot might drop in and it'd be likely that you'll break your leg. Whereas a risk might be that there is a large sort of hole in the yard or something like that, but a child can see it and they can test how deep it is and maybe walk on its uneven surface. So if we take away all the risk in play, we're taking away the opportunity for children to learn how to do things for themselves. And that's so fundamental. There will come a time where they need to know the limits of their bodies, where they need to know how to socially or emotionally stop or say no. They need those skills for themselves. A nice way to think about challenging your child is really to ask them to try and do things for themselves. If they're getting a bit stuck with something, say they're halfway up a tree and they start to get stressed and worried, we can support them. I'm right here, you can do it, but maybe challenging them by maybe just talking them through how to get down. Just take a deep breath and maybe try popping your foot here. You're all right, you got up there, you'll be able to get down. So talking them through it instead of actually physically moving their legs or pulling them down from the tree, in which case they're not learning how to do it themselves. So leaving an element of that challenge for them will extend their abilities because, again, they're kind of playing on the edge of what their capabilities are and they're learning how to do new things. The next time that they do it, they'll be just that little bit more competent and that little bit more competent until they're up and down there in a flash without even thinking about it. Play is all about testing. It's all about trying things out. So give them a chance. Allow them to test things out, try things out, allow them to fail, allow them to make mistakes because that's how they learn.
So, what is risky play? That was just introduced in that video. We are going to talk about some of the components and give some examples, and then we're going to watch some real-time risky play from a visit to one of our family child care programs here in our beautiful state of Wisconsin. But starting off, so we all have a same understanding of what risky play is. It's unstructured play that involves some risk of injury. So it can be physical and emotional injury or emotional injury. Today, we are going to be focused mainly on that physical risks today. So it typically involves children experimenting with things like heights. So that includes climbing and jumping off of things, high speeds, so racing, running, and crashing, tools like hammers and mallets, near the elements. So this would be bodies of water or maybe playing near a fire pit. Play with a chance of getting lost, which is not something that you as a early childhood educator can offer children. And finally, rough and tumble play. So also known as play fighting. And I do want to pull out rough and tumble play because it's one of the most common forms of play among young children and many other animals as well, many other young animals. So that's why you see the bears play fighting on the slide here. So as we talk about this, as you listen to the video introducing this concept, I would love to know what types of risky play do you currently see in your program? What comes up for you when we talk about these things? And if you're willing and able, we'd love to hear from you. Please put those answers in the chat. Play fighting, jumping, running, climbing up ladders outside, wrestling, lots of climbing, play with loose parts. Valentina says playing at high speed, running, dancing to the music fast. Oh, I love this, Amy. Standing on tables and chairs during floor is lava game. So if you're still writing, please continue and share your thoughts in the chat, and we are going to keep going. Actually, before I minimize that, I did see Alexis said paying no attention to their surroundings. So that is a really important component that we're going to talk about later on how you can help support children to become more aware of their surroundings as they're engaged in risky play, playing at high speeds, crashing, all of those things. As promised, we are going to look at an example of this in action, the first being playing with heights through climbing trees. So this is a video that was taken at a visit to Kathy's Kids Home Child Care, which is Kathleen is located in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I encourage you as you watch this, watch and listen to how Kathleen approaches children's risky play, how she interacts with this child.
You don't want to jump? That's okay. If your body's telling you no, then don't. Okay.
Hey, look how high! Look how high!
Gavin, that's awesome. How do you feel?
So happy.
So happy? Are you proud that you climbed up that high? Oh, you're not even holding on.
This cat ran after you.
Wow, Gavin. Are you a little monkey or a bear?
What? Miss Gabby?
Yeah.
And he climbed so high.
He did climb so high. Do you need help?
Yeah.
Okay. Riley, can we use this tree for a second? So what I'm going to do is guide your foot right there. Okay, now you got the rest. Oh, what do you think is in that hole? Do you think there's bugs in there?
So what did you notice Miss Kathy doing in that video? I noticed that, yeah, staying back, being encouraging. Yep, all very true. Acknowledged his feelings, gave positive encouragement. Yes, yeah. Kathy asked Gavin to name how he was feeling and also noticed that he needed help getting down. So she directed other children away from the tree and allowed Gavin the space to climb down. She even offered support that was, again, respectful. She told him what she was doing, how she was going to support him, and also a lot of encouragement to help Gavin feel confident enough that I can do this. Yes, yes. Thank you all for your comments too, stepping in when needed after she watched and encouraged the child exploring the environment. Yes. Here's another example of playing near the elements. Again, please just watch and listen to how Kathy approaches risky play in her program. So they're all playing near a stream in the woods.
I see the reflection of the sky in the water. Do you see that?
I can't.
Just look. What's what? That's the reflection of the sky. Yeah.
Watch out!
Where are you going, Aaliyah?
Kathy, look at!
Oh my goodness. How about we
It's
put that one
Kathy,
down?
look at!
No, you want to play with that? Okay, let me move out of your way then.
Riley, put it over there! Under the big...
Gavin and Amelia, be aware of Riley's big stick, okay?
Riley, can I hold the end? Sure!
Good teamwork. Aaliyah's got one too. What's your plan with the stick? Watch out for Gavin.
Watch
Good job,
out!
you moved out of the way.
Put it down!
What did you notice in that one? Right, Chastity. Telling them to be aware of their surroundings. Yeah, she's announcing it, saying it out loud, and even did so for herself. She said, I am moving myself out of the way. Tracy says praise for teamwork. Yep. I also noticed in that video the toddler that was closer to Kathleen and the baby facing outward. The baby had the view of other children engaged in risky play, and that toddler clearly wasn't feeling comfortable to, take off her shoes and run in the water. And that was okay. It was okay that she wasn't ready for that yet. So now we're going to hear, this is Linda Nelson. She is the program owner of Happy Hearts Childcare in Middleton, Wisconsin. And Linda has a specialty in infant and young toddler education. So that is the perspective that Linda will be providing us today. What does infant and toddler risky play look like in your program?
When I first started thinking about what risky play is for infants, my husband and I were joking around, well, maybe it's alligator wrestling. So we found an alligator, a stuffed one, and we gave it to the kids to wrestle with, just for the fun of it. But it's not like we have calculus for 12th graders, and we have playtime and learning with shapes and spaces for babies. And so with risky play for infants and toddlers, it's brought down a few notches. So we're not putting them on the steps and we're not letting them fall down the steps. But I provide places that the children can practice going up and down. And first they start kneeling at the edge of this step or this platform. And then eventually they start pushing up on their hands and their feet. And then they get enough courage to start lifting up a leg or pushing up onto their belly and climbing up. And then they figure out the coming down part. So I've had kids on our log garden where we have a log that's maybe 12 inches off the ground over a mulched surface. And I've had a 10-month-old child who climbed up onto this flat log, sat down, and was too close to the edge. I'm always catching their heads. That's one thing that I feel, if I can catch their heads, that's good. But I let their bottoms hit, because when they hit ground and they get that little bit of an adrenaline rush, their body remembers things better. It's kind of like when we see a bear and we have to fight for our lives or run for our lives. We get an adrenaline rush, but boy, do we remember that incident. And kids do too.
So again, like Linda was saying, risky play for infants and toddlers, it's just scaled down. It's providing those safe spaces where children can experiment. So you're not putting them at the top of the stairs and letting them just experiment that way. It's something that's developmentally appropriate. You're offering them stairs that they can pull up on and climb up on and get that thrill and excitement from trying it themselves. I also want to highlight what she said about the way our memory works. And she is absolutely right that when an experience is tied to a strong emotion, which includes excitement and fear or stress, it's much more likely to be then processed into long-term memory. So she's exactly right. And same goes for risky play. So now that we all have an understanding of what we're talking about when we say risky play, we know what it looks like, we considered how it is scaled down for infants and toddlers, we're going to talk about why this is so essential for children. So risky play is shown to increase children's self-esteem, so how they feel about themselves. It's shown to help their ability to assess risk and know the limits of their bodies. Children who engage in more risky play also show higher problem-solving capabilities. They also show more impulse control, which is the ability to refrain from acting before really considering all of the consequences of their actions. Risky play also supports children's resiliency and their ability to get back up and try again. And a summary of all of this and all of the academic research on the implications of risky play, particularly speaking about outdoor risky play, was written by Brusoni and their colleagues in 2012. And if you would like to read more into this, I will be sending this in a follow-up email. And much of this research that led to these conclusions are done through observational studies or studies where researchers are observing children in play, as well as longitudinal studies, which means studying the same group of children over time. Finally, this is a really important piece of why risky play is so important, and we are going to hear from others talk about this as well later on today. Risky play is shown to reduce children's fear and anxiety over time. So repeated exposure to manageable fear and excitement through risky play, that is what helps children cope with those experiences over time and feel less fear, less anxiety to stressful situations, to new situations over time. And some people argue that if children are not getting this when they're really young, that could potentially translate into anxiety disorders later on because they maintain that fear, they maintain that anxiety. So and I want to say too, and this is backed with research on humans and on animals. They show through studies with rhesus monkeys and rats that when they deprive children of this type of play, later on when they're older, they show increased aggression, they show exaggerated emotional reactions, and excessive fear when put in stressful situations. So it's a really, really fundamental part of early childhood and childhood in general. This idea of testing the limits of your bodies and facing fears in a developmentally appropriate way. So now we're going to hear from Amy Nogar. Amy Nogar is the program owner of Amy and Kids Co-Nature Play School in Appleton, Wisconsin. She is also an adjunct professor at Fox Valley Technical College. I asked Amy, how do you support children's risky play? And this was her response.
Not like, hey guys, go jump off the table, or hey, let's go play with sticks, you know? I just kind of set up the environment and I don't shut things down. We're talking in class right now about hazards and risks. And so I'm always, watching for hazards and things that, they either don't see or things that will definitely cause an injury and taking care of those things. But as far as the risky play, I just kind of watch it, I observe it. I may point some things out like, if you fall there, that might hurt. But then I don't shut it down. I have these little child-sized picnic tables and they like to jump off of them. And actually this morning, one of the kids was holding onto a shovel on the edge of the picnic table and the other one was going to jump onto the shovel. And I said, that's not such a good idea because one of you is going to get hurt. That's not safe. So that was like a hazard. I shut that one down. But the jumping off the picnic table, I know these kids, I know they can do it. I just check the area. When they started, I'm like, there's a bike right there. If you land on that, that could hurt. And they were like, oh yeah. And they moved the bike. If they hadn't moved the bike, I would have moved it. But, that's kind of how I don't want to say I encourage risky play, but I support it and I allow it. Instead of saying, be careful, be careful, be careful, you get them to think because I'm not always going to be there to say, be careful. They have to be able to think of it themselves and say, oh, that's sharp, that could hurt me. Or, if I land on that, that'll hurt. Family child care, we often have our children for a long amount of time and we get to really know them. And so, like I said, with these two children, I knew this was something they could do. I kind of kept an eye on them, but I wasn't right there because I knew they were going to be fine. This is something they do all the time, So you get to know your children, you get to know their abilities, which ones are taking new risks, and you have to be kind of there in case they were to fall, or, which ones you can kind of trust a little bit because they're used to taking risks and they know their body's capabilities. So I think knowing your children is a big part of it too. Children have to engage in risky play to learn how to assess risk. Those two boys that were jumping off the picnic table, there's two picnic tables and they're about this far apart. So they're not real far apart. And one of them jumped from one to the other. And the other one was same age. And he looked at it and he's like, I don't know about that. And so instead of jumping, he kind of fell forward. So his feet were on one and his hands were on the other. And then he kind of leapfrogged to the other one because he knew in his head that I'm not sure I can do that jump. So I'm going to do it a different way. But if kids don't get a chance to try that, then they don't know what they're capable of or what they're not capable of. And that's why they get injured more when they're older because they try things they can't really do. And part of, growing up and even as adults, we're assessing risk all day long. We're driving in our car and we're looking around, is that car going to pull out in front of me? What's the risk of that? And so we have to allow children to take risks so they learn how to assess risks because they're going to be doing it their entire lives.
Amy said, similar to how Kathleen approached risky play in her program earlier, it's important to notice things and say it aloud for children in the environment and pointing that out they might not be aware of. There's a bike on the ground where you're jumping. If you jump on that shovel that your friend's standing on, someone may get hit with the other end. And she also acknowledges what this can look like when you have a mixed age group of children. Now, I know there might be fear among some of you that if you allow risky play in your program, you support it, that maybe some of the younger toddlers are going to start wanting to do things that's not developmentally appropriate, but that it's just not the case, and that's shown time and time again. It is also mentioned in more detail in the academic research summary that I will send out in a follow-up email. Oh, another snippet that Amy did also talk about was there are more strategic ways to support children in their assessment of safety and risk during risky play that go beyond saying be careful. And we're going to talk about that more in the at the end of our time together today. So just hold on to that. And we're going to watch a portion of this video now. This is Heather. She will be talking about the benefits of risky play again, why this is so important. Get this set up for you. I will pause my screen for a moment. Okay, thank you for your patience.
On a day, months before the pandemic would change our lives forever, my younger son, who had grown really tired of waiting for his older brother, I wanted to get his attention. So he ran to his bedroom, got his green camo hat, his yellow goggles, ran to the top of the stairs with his sleeping bag, and yelled out, "Hey, want to go for a ride?" Risky play is what this is. It is thrilling and exciting. It has elements of uncertainty, and it's something that kids feel that they must do, even if there is a risk of physical injury. Now, parents, on the other hand, aren't as excited about it as the kids are. But the more we know about risky play, the more we know that it actually helps kids with problem solving and decision making and helps them to avoid injury and hazard, and that makes them good risk managers. Now, when I say risk, you might be thinking of something scary or dangerous, but we take risks every day just by getting out of bed. I should know, about 10 years ago, I broke my foot getting out of bed. Researchers have discussed and researched risky play in a lot of different ways, and some people refer to it as adventurous play or even being in a deep state of play. I like to think about it in terms of what the children are doing: climbing, crashing, and being curious about natural elements and tools. Go to a playground, and you will see just as many children climbing the playground equipment as you will see them climbing nearby trees or their parents' bodies. Children get a thrill out of climbing. They get that feeling up the back of their neck as they put one hand over the other, trying to find a secure place for their hands and feet. And it gives them that feeling, if I don't get this right, I could die. And that sounds really dramatic, but they are absolutely facing their mortality. And it's what makes it so fun. It's what makes them hold on longer and tighter, and it's what makes them come back for more. When I think about where kids gather, I think about hallways, elementary, middle school hallways. Those kids are intentionally crashing into one another. Kids today haven't had as many opportunities to crash and collide. Maybe they haven't had the opportunity to jump on the trampoline and crash into each other, or other forms of horsing around, or what I like to refer to it as rough and tumble play and play fighting. What is so great about rough and tumble play is how children get to practice communication skills, both verbal and nonverbal. If I'm engaged in superhero play with my friend, and we are tussling back and forth, trying to secure the safety of the entire universe, I have to look at my friend's face and make sure that their face isn't contorted in pain. And if they are, we need to stop and reset. Similarly, if I say, stop, time out, I'm hoping that my friend will listen to me and consent. Risky play and rough and tumble play helps children feel where their body is at in time and space.
This full video will be sent to you in a follow-up email. I love how Heather talks about rough and tumble play and all of the nonverbal cues that children have to attend to when they're engaged in, play fighting. And with young children, with very young children, such as the children that you all educate and care for every day, that's why an adult being there to help teach children about those nonverbal cues and point out, hey, stop, do you see their face? And then you check in with the other child. Do you like that? Do you need a break? And helping them, offer them the words to advocate for themselves and their needs so that people aren't pushed to get hurt or past where they're comfortable with, especially in that rough and tumble play. So now we're going to hear again from Linda, and she's just going to bring the infant and young toddler piece into it. Why this is so important.
Risky play is important for babies because they start out life very fragile, very in need of a lot of human care. And as they grow, they learn that they're safe, they're loved, they're well fed. And from that base, they can then begin to grow and learn new things. And so they're stretching out and they're trying new things, but in that process, they're also taking little risks along the way. So playing peekaboo is one area that is a little risk for babies. It gives them that little bit of a surprise. All of a sudden their world disappears. They have that reflex that they can't breathe when their face is covered. They take a big breath and then their face is uncovered and they see everything is there and they're okay, and they continue on playing this game and getting more and more comfortable with it each time, hopefully. The babies start to grow and try new things, and so in this process they're learning and developing all these neurons and synapses in their brain that help them expand their learning and reaching out to new places, new things to try. One thing we want to avoid with these children that are learning new things is to avoid putting them in places that they haven't tried themselves first. So I have a child who is pulling up on logs and tree stumps in our area, but for me to take a 7-month-old and just stand him there and not support him and expect him to hold on isn't appropriate. But when I can see that he's starting to hold on to other things and I can help him by figuring out how to hold on to something, I can give him light support in that way.
Linda touched on this a little bit in that video we just watched together. You might be wondering, how do I keep the children in my program safe? I am an early childhood educator. I have been given the responsibility of keeping other people's children safe, and I want to make sure that I'm keeping them safe and also nurturing their development. So before we get into this section, I want to acknowledge that it's not as easy for me to sit here and say, go let children hang from tree branches and crash into each other. You have a lot of pieces that you have to hold, and there's a lot of context that surrounds this concept. One, you may not have access to a safe outdoor space for which children could be doing this. Two, you may have concerns about public perception and safety, or even visibility if you will be doing this in more of a public space. And we respect that you must hold all of these pieces. And because of that, this may look differently in your program. So, wanted to name that disclaimer that there are a lot of contextual pieces that surround risky play. And with that being said, what are your barriers to supporting this, to allowing this in your program? If you're willing and able, we would love to hear from you. Please share in the chat. Monica, I feel as though many people would agree with you. This topic gives me anxiety. I'm worth trying it and growing. And two other comments, Nikki and Kathy came through that are similar. My biggest thing is explaining to parents you're there, but also children need to learn trial and error all on their own. You can't always hold their hand. I'm scared the parents I have would not like it with the children. Patty says if all kids of multi ages are on the loose, we have to give some limits at times to ensure all are safe. Yes. Mixed ages. Sandy says mixed ages make it difficult. Running wild with a younger one in the room may turn out bad. All of these are extremely valid. And we're going to talk about sitting with that discomfort in yourself as an educator, and then how you can communicate with parents and family members on this. Amy is going to talk about the communicating with family members part. So she's going to provide that insight because she's doing it as a family child care educator.
I have an intake form that I created, and one of the questions, actually before the intake form, when we interview, I send home a little questionnaire, like a getting to know you thing. And one of the questions is, how do you feel about, and I think I put down like appropriate risks, because I don't want parents to think that I'm letting the kids, do whatever they want. But I ask, how do you feel about your child getting dirty? How do you feel about minor injuries, scrapes, bumps, and bruises? How do you feel about risks? And we talk about it in the interview. And if the parents are not sure about allowing their child to get dirty, or, I really don't want my child to ever get hurt, or, I'm just not sure about risks, then I know that they're not a good fit for my program. And I also tell the parents that, risk taking is important because I'd like them to learn that when they fall on asphalt, it hurts when they're short and they're only 2 feet off the ground, instead of when they're like 12, 13 and have never fallen before, and they're much bigger and they have further to fall and they fall harder. And the parents are all like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I say,
So it sounds like you're having these conversations with the parents beforehand and setting
yeah,
up that
yep,
expectation.
absolutely. Yep. And then once they've enrolled, I have my Facebook page, and I'm constantly posting things about taking risks and being outdoors and, active play and that kind of thing too. The hardest thing is that we really don't want the children to get hurt. And, I always feel bad when I have to tell a parent their child was injured, even if it's just a skin knee or something. And I think a lot of parents, they don't want their children to get hurt. And so there's that, you don't want the child to get hurt, but yet it's good for them, and the parent doesn't want them to get hurt, and you're kind of afraid that maybe the parent's going to get mad if they get hurt, especially if it's a little more serious injury like a broken bone, or something that needs stitches or something. You don't want the parents to get mad at you, and you definitely don't want them to call a licensor. So there's always that concern. And then there's the society, helicopter parenting right now, that everybody's always protecting children from everything, which is not good for their growth and development long term. And then also, in family childcare, we're in our homes, excuse me, and maybe there's a neighbor looking out the window and saying, those kids shouldn't be doing that, and who knows if they're going to call whatever. It's a funny thing, but I'm on one of these scanner pages, and last summer or the summer before, they were talking about some of the ridiculous things people call in, and someone literally called in because the neighbor kids were outside camping overnight on one of those really hot days, and it was too hot for them to be outside.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, you don't want a parent to call or a neighbor to call or something because the kids are doing something dangerous when it's just risky play. So there's a lot of challenges to that. I think again it goes back to a lot of not understanding the importance of risky play too, and how beneficial it is for the kids because there's, tons and tons of benefits we've been talking about in my class that it's physical, it's cognitive, it's creative, it sets them up for success in life. But
Absolutely.
some people can't look past the whole, oh, we can't let them get hurt.
Amy is again touching on that broader issue, how society and family members and adults view risky play. And one way that you are going to overcome this is by being confident and prepared, informed, and know what you are doing to help mitigate those risks and be able to communicate it to family members. So start advocating for children's risk-taking behaviors now was a big theme that I heard from Amy. We are going to hear from Linda again about, again, setting up those expectations right away with families.
So when I'm initially interviewing parents, I let them know full on. I have a biology degree. We like playing outside and we like getting dirty and kind of messy sometimes. And I let parents know that their child will come home with bumps and possibly bruises, little scrapes, and their clothes might be a little messy. Um, I don't always change them if they've gotten into something. I think that's part of the story that they tell their parents at the end of a day. That they had the blueberries for lunch and they played in dirt over here and they were painting a project over here. And when I'm interviewing the parents, you can sometimes sense a reaction in parents that aren't comfortable with this mode of play. And so I tend to veer away from parents that are too bashful with the messy play, the risky play side of things. I also have it in my contract that parents understand that this is part of our play and how we get around throughout the day, that I'm not just setting the babies in front of a TV or a screen, but I'm letting them get out there and do developmentally appropriate things that keep them moving towards their eventual goal of becoming a healthy, well-adjusted adult.
We're going to end today by talking through some of the things that you can do as an early childhood educator to lower the risk of injury for your children. Because, like Amy and Linda said, at the end of the day, you do not want children to get hurt, and you want to protect them from that. And you want to offer them opportunities to feel that thrill and excitement that is risky play and risk taking. So the first one is to remove hazards. Things that children cannot see and they cannot anticipate affecting their play. So this would be all the basic stuff that is already a part of owning and operating a childcare business. So sharp corners, loose screws, the stability of your playground equipment, if you have any. If you're going to be climbing trees, thinking about and becoming educated yourself on how to tell what is a healthy tree, what looks like a strong and secure healthy tree. Hazards, they're invisible to the child. They cannot anticipate it. So this also would include, as you see on the slide here, ice, choking hazards for children under 3, toxic plants, equipment that is too close together, and equipment that is not age appropriate for the children who will be using it. And again, this is something that you all are already doing because it is a part of operating a childcare business. This is a big one that has come up, just staying in close proximity and staying alert and present. And I know you all have this amazing ability to be aware of 15 different things that are happening at one time. So stay close and stay present. Children will continuously look to you, similar to how Gavin was looking towards Miss Kathy in the video we watched earlier. And they're looking to you for that reassurance, that encouragement, and that support. This also helps, obviously, if a child does fall and maybe gets a bump on their knee, that you can say, I was right next to them. I saw it all, rather than, oh, I was helping another child, or I've told them lots of times to be careful doing that. For an example of adjusting your environment too, to set boundaries and keep children safe, Linda, you see here on the right of our screen here, there's a little ramp that Linda has in her program. And it goes up to a teller's play structure. Linda cares and educates infants and young toddlers. So she'll put that down throughout the day. But if she is going to have her hands tied up, if she's going to be giving a child a bottle or changing a diaper, and she knows I'm not going to be able to be right next to the ramp and the taller play structure, I'm going to have to lift this up and not have it be accessible for children. So there are ways that you could also do this in your program to adjust the environment so that you can set boundaries and keep children safe. Because ultimately, children are going to want to engage in risky play. This is not something that you have to encourage children to do by any means. They're going to do it naturally. And study after study has shown that children, when given free rein, are going to climb, they're going to crash, they're going to play fight. It is something innate in young children. So give descriptive feedback. And we're going to talk, like I mentioned earlier, about other ways of that are more optimal, that are better than saying be careful. But giving feedback also includes setting boundaries. So again, setting boundaries, extremely important. And it shows the child that you are capable of keeping them safe. So as a childcare professional, it's your responsibility to ensure that risk taking in your program is developmentally appropriate. And you do that by knowing your children and your children's abilities. So you will have to say sometimes, you may not climb the fence. Stop. Look at your friend's face. You may not jump off the couch onto the coffee table. And one great way to help increase cooperation among the children that you serve is to offer a more appropriate alternative that is still risky, it's still thrilling. If you have to set a boundary, think about what's an alternative that I can offer that is developmentally appropriate, that is still thrilling to the child. So for that example, you may not jump from the couch onto the coffee table, but you may jump from the third step of the stairs onto the couch cushions. Wouldn't that be fun? So offering that alternative to offer the child a way to still get out that need of thrilling and exciting play. So I'm going to have Amy, if you could please, oh, I see Amy put in the chat. It is in both English and Spanish from Backwards Mama, Raising Outdoor Kids. What to say instead of be careful. So just to name right now, there's nothing inherently wrong or harmful with saying be careful to children. It's actually you saying, like, I care about you and I want to keep you safe. And what you're doing right now has me feeling really nervous. It's a phrase that we say out of love and out of care for children. With that being said, there are better ways to respond to children and give that descriptive feedback when they are engaging in risky play. So notice how these rocks are slippery. Do you see your friends nearby as you're running? Try moving your feet. Try using your elbows. Do you feel stable on that rock? Are you feeling proud, scared, excited? So these are some ways that you can help give that descriptive feedback and offer an awareness to children of their surroundings. And that is in the chat. And I see Patty also added, look around you. Do you have enough room? What a great addition to this resource. Look around you. Do you have enough room? Thank you. Thank you again. We really appreciate your time and participation, and we hope this was valuable for you.